The 2024 Formula 1 season is officially underway. Yes, cars finally hit the track for practice in Bahrain. We can officially say we've seen the first official laps of Formula 1 action in 2024. Man, there were a few surprises in the first two practice sessions on Thursday. Guys, welcome back to Racing Direct. If you're new to the channel, please make sure you've hit subscribe and like this video before we get into all of the action. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it and check out all the action from practice at Bahrain. Now, first practice sessions always have to be taken with a bit of a grain of salt, especially the first one of the season. However, we did see some real surprises at the top. If you watched my earlier video on Visa Cash App RB, maybe you won't be too surprised because I predicted these guys to be fast. And well, in the soft tire conditions in Bahrain, they look mighty quick. If you want to know how quick, well, Daniel Ricciardo finished FP1 in P1. Yuki Tsunoda was in P4. They were separated by the two McLarens in second and third. Quite the shake up at the top. Now, obviously, yes, most of the teams were running on medium tires. They didn't want to use their softs right away. They wanted to save those for the second practice session. But VCarb and McLaren were both very eager to jump onto those soft tires and get some fast laps in quickly while the track was still fresh. Now, the only drivers to break into the 132s in FP1 were Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris, again, of course, on the soft tires. Now, the fastest of the medium tire runners was actually Fernando Alonso. That Aston Martin is looking pretty good. Behind him, the second fastest on the medium tires was Max Verstappen in the Red Bull RB20. Unsurprisingly, they are looking pretty quick. However, it's not been smooth sailing for them. A notable point from this early practice session was that Max Verstappen was saying the car felt miles off where he wanted to be. He was also explaining how he was feeling some very violent upshifts and downshifts that felt like the entire car was moving up and down. It was a very bizarre problem that he was reporting. Honestly, everyone was a little bit shocked. I was a bit shocked to hear that too, considering that all we've heard about going into preseason testing and when this car was revealed was that this RB20 looked like a rocket ship and it was just going to blow the doors off everybody. So these early problems are a little bit concerning. Another problem that Verstappen mentioned over the radio was that the torque felt very off. He honestly felt like he was on throttle even when he wasn't, especially in the low speed corners. Very bizarre problem to have. Jean-Pierre Lambiase is going to have his hands full working overnight getting this car ready for the qualifying session on Friday. Now, yes, of course, this is probably just a little blip on the radar for Red Bull. I'm sure they're going to work this issue out and they're going to be fine. It is Red Bull, after all, the reigning champions. I'm pretty certain they're going to be okay come qualifying time. Honestly, despite all these little problems they're having in early practice sessions, they're probably still the favorite to get pole and the race win. However, this is looking a little alarming for them because they do have to be aware that people are catching up behind them. They can't really afford to have these little issues hanging over their heads for very long. Other than that, though, from the front runners, there wasn't really much else to talk about in FP1. It seems like Mercedes and Ferrari were really just running their own little programs, just trying to get a better feel for their cars. Of course, again, it is practice, so not everyone's going flat out in the first session. However, when FP2 rolled around, there was a lot more change that made things even more interesting. Of course, FP2 is when most teams really start to break out the soft tires and go for their qualifying simulation runs. And this is the session that was topped by Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, followed by his teammate George Russell for a 1-2 in FP2. That is mighty impressive for Mercedes, considering that the drivers said yes, the car feels pretty good in testing, however they weren't really sure if it was going to be that fast. But in these qualifying simulation runs, it seemed pretty nimble. The W15 seems like it could be a pretty decent improvement over last year's car. Honestly, when you're talking about Mercedes standards, the W14 was incredibly underwhelming. So it's almost going to be impossible for them to go further back, but again, it all depends where the other teams are and how much their rivals have improved. And honestly, McLaren is looking like they could be the second fastest team heading into qualifying. Yes, they weren't as impressive in FP2 because, yes, then everyone started to use the soft tires where they were one of the only ones in FP1. However, Oscar Piastri came in P5 in FP2 and looks pretty good in pretty much any condition he's in. However, we also need to be aware that Fernando Alonso in that Aston Martin is looking pretty damn quick on medium and soft tires. It's really a toss-up after, well, I'm pretty sure even with their problems, Red Bull is still going to be the fastest. After that, though, it is a complete toss-up. We still haven't seen really the full potential of Ferrari. Of course, as I mentioned, they're doing their own little tests. McLaren and Aston Martin look very good. VCarb is right in the mix. Yes, they took a step back in FP2, of course, when everybody else jumped onto the softs. However, that car is still looking like a legitimate dark horse like I predicted earlier on this channel. At the back of the grid, though, the two things that stood out to me are the two teams that are seriously lacking are Haas and Alpine. Not really sure what Alpine is doing. Of course, Haas, they didn't really do so good last year. They haven't really been doing good for the last few years in general. So not really too surprising that they have some work to do. But Alpine, I'm really concerned for what this car is exactly. Of course, Alpine and Renault are pouring so much money into this project. We remember Cyril's famous words that they basically wanted to compete for championships really, really fast. However, these things don't happen overnight, and I'm honestly concerned they've taken another step backwards. However, again, just like Ferrari, we haven't really seen the full potential of this car just yet. Those are just my initial thoughts on the first 2 practice sessions of the 2024 Formula 1 season. It is really anybody's guess who is going to be the best of the rest behind Red Bull, or who knows, maybe somebody can seriously give these guys an actual fight and give us an exciting 2024 season. One can only dream. Unless you're a diehard Red Bull fan, you don't want to see that, but we will have to see what happens in qualifying on Friday in Bahrain under the lights. It's going to be an exciting one, guys. Thanks as always for tuning in. If you didn't get the message at the start, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button. We'll see you next time.